written about on the whole, whose lives are shrouded in mystery, and they want to hide their secrets. And I just love digging away to find out what they don't want us.
Why Meghan?
Well, because she posed a challenge to the royal family, and she's a fascinating person. I mean, she's a person who started from nothing and has become a world global star. And that route to the top has never really been properly reported and examined and investigated.
Each day, I post a new video exploring recent developments surrounding Meghan Markle and the royal family. If this continuing saga interests you, you're welcome to subscribe, like, or leave a comment. It means more than you know. Thank you for being here. Now, on to today's story. What if one of the most talked about royal stories isn't what it looked like at all, and now insiders are finally speaking up? That question is blowing up online right now.
And I must say, it's always beyond Meghan. Meghan doesn't believe in reconciliation. Look at her appalling relationship with her father. She's a hardened.
Lady C and Tom Bower have dropped some shocking claims about Meghan, and people can't stop reacting. Fans are doing double takes, replaying old clips, zooming into photos, and asking one thing again and again. What really happened behind the scenes? According to these reports, doubts are being raised about Meghan's pregnancy timeline, and the internet is spiraling with theories. Supporters are clapping back hard, while critics are lining up details they think don't add up. Moments that once seemed totally normal are now being picked apart from every angle. It's messy, loud, and non-stop drama, but here's where it turns even more intense. Are these just strong opinions, or is there something deeper people missed this whole time? Lady C and Tom Bower aren't known for staying quiet, and their latest claims are turning up the heat in a major way. Now it's starting to look like Meghan Markle's legal team made a bold move, but it might come with serious consequences.
I personally think there are times when he should have. You are absolutely right. The book is littered with inconsistencies and anomalies, where Harry is on the one hand raging about people and how terrible they are because they are doing to him exactly what he is doing to someone else. But he's a wonderful person. But they're
going after Lady Colin Campbell, who's been tied to royal stories for decades, and Tom Bower, an investigator known for digging into powerful figures, is not a small step. That kind of move doesn't silence people. It sets things off. And if Prince Harry actually moves forward with legal action, this situation could escalate fast. Courtrooms aren't neat or controlled like people think. They open everything up. Records get pulled, timelines get questioned, and private messages can come into the spotlight. People are already talking about documents, dates, and behind-the-scenes details that some believe have stayed hidden for years. Once something reaches that level, nothing stays locked away. Every piece of information can be examined. And then there's Lady C, calm, steady, almost unfazed. She looks straight ahead with quiet confidence, like she knows more than she's saying. No panic, no pressure, just control. Meanwhile, reports claim investigators have been going through records in both London and California, digging deeper and deeper as this story keeps growing louder. And now what they've found, or didn't find, is setting off serious whispers behind palace walls. People are talking quietly, but the tension is loud, so the big question keeps coming up. What do Lady C and Tom Bower actually know that's making Meghan's legal team uneasy? And then there's that one idea that just won't go away. A simple DNA test. Commentators keep saying it could shut down years of rumours in one move, yet somehow it never happens, and that only adds more curiosity. Think about it.
All Samantha's questions from her lawyers, whether she lied about Samantha, about Thomas Markle in her notorious interview with Oprah Winfrey. So that's a major breakthrough for Samantha Markle, for Thomas Markle, and for the...
You've seen situations like this before. Legal warnings get sent. Pressure builds, and the goal is to make people back off. It's a strategy. Create noise, raise the stakes, and hope critics go silent. But here's where things could flip completely. If a defamation case actually gets filed, everything changes fast. Discovery kicks in, and suddenly lawyers can start asking for everything. Documents, timelines, messages, every detail tied to the claims can be pulled into the spotlight. That could mean records people never expected to be discussed publicly. Official documents, timelines, even private communications, information that's been protected for years could suddenly be reviewed in a legal setting. Legal analysts have made one thing clear. If Prince Harry moves forward with action against Lady C or Tom Bower, it could seriously backfire.
I was shocked to hear that. I mean, is that who he is?
Well, I think Harry is a very complicated person because he's not very intelligent and undoubtedly remains damaged by the early death of his mother, Diana. And he very foolishly blames the media for having, in his words, murdered her, which is complete nonsense. But I think he loved the adulation. He loved it when he was being praised, especially when he was a soldier. But then he became critical.
It might open the door to the exact kind of records and details that have been at the centre of all this talk. And then there's the Samantha Markle lawsuit, which is already showing how intense and revealing these cases can get. What some people once dismissed is now being taken much more seriously. Reports claim Meghan could be required to give a formal deposition under oath by July. That means answering questions she hasn't had to face publicly before, and doing it on the record. Once things reach court, everything speeds up. It's no longer about headlines or online debates. It's about evidence, proof, and what can actually be backed up. Critics have pointed out that clear proof hasn't always been front and centre in these discussions, and that's why this moment feels so big. One thing is clear: Lady Colin Campbell and Tom Bower are not random voices chasing attention, and their involvement is keeping this story alive and intense. These aren't just random commentators jumping into the noise. These are people with deep roots in royal reporting. Lady C has spent decades writing about the royal family, building connections and sources that go far back into those inner circles. Over time, she's made claims that many brushed off at first, only for some of those details to later gain real attention. That history is exactly why people stop and listen when she speaks now. Then there's Tom Bower, bringing a different kind of pressure, but just as strong. He's known across Britain as a relentless investigative author who doesn't back down. His book, Revenge, reportedly stirred major frustration inside the Sussex circle when it was released. Throughout his career, Bower has taken on powerful names, digging into records, speaking with insiders, and exposing details many would rather keep hidden.
I think it's mixed. I think that once she saw Meghan when she came to London in 2016, 2018, and she reached out to Victoria to get freebies.
What's making this moment even more intense is the claim that certain records have already been examined. Reports suggest Bower's team looked into files connected to Portland Hospital in London and Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital in California, two places often linked to the births of Harry and Meghan's children. Investigators were said to be searching for the standard paper trail you'd expect from any major medical event: confirmations, records, and routine documentation. But according to Lady C, there may be gaps that raise questions. She points to concerns around timelines, private communications, and even individuals who were present and could potentially speak.
Or shall we say stretching the truth? Could the single case see Harry caught up in his own web of lies? Well, to answer this and much more, I'm delighted to welcome the world's top royal author. He, of course, published Revenge, Meghan, Harry, and the War Between the Windsors, Tom Bower. So, Tom, this feels like a significant development tonight. What's happening?
Well, if I was Meghan, I'd be undoubtedly very worried tonight. What the judge just...
That's where things start to feel even more serious, because it shifts from online chatter to claims of missing or unclear details. What really adds a twist is that she didn't believe the early rumours at all. When the speculation first showed up online, she dismissed it completely, seeing it as too extreme to take seriously. At the time, it sounded like something no credible voice would even touch. But then things changed quickly. Calls started coming in, journalists began asking questions, and sources connected to palace circles quietly admitted they felt uneasy about certain details. Step by step, what started as random online chatter began turning into something people couldn't ignore. Lady C says she shifted her focus to what was actually seen in public, and what might have been happening quietly behind palace doors. And according to reports, even behind the scenes, the situation didn't sit comfortably with everyone. The expectation had always been simple. A traditional royal birth announcement at St Mary's Hospital in Paddington would clear everything up instantly. That location has a long history with royal births, where details are usually laid out clearly. Doctors are named, consultants are identified, and the process feels open and transparent. That kind of clarity usually shuts down speculation before it even starts. But this time, critics say something felt different. There were no publicly named doctors, no listed consultants, none of the usual details people expect with royal announcements. And when that kind of silence shows up, questions don't stay quiet. They build fast and spread even faster. Then attention shifted to commentary from medical professionals reacting to public appearances.
That Samantha only called herself Markle when Meghan was engaged to Harry, which Samantha says is a total lie. Interestingly, Samantha also says that Meghan's story about having a Ford Explorer where she could only get in through the boot was also untrue. She goes through a whole load of Meghan's lies. So by July, that is what the judge has said, these depositions, this cross-examination of Meghan will take place for the trial to start in October. So Meghan really has a problem because until today, her lawyers have been saying this is so ridiculous, we refuse to even engage with Samantha Markle.
A retired labour and delivery nurse with over 30 years of experience reportedly said she had never seen a pregnancy bump behave in that way. In photos, a retired midwife shared a similar reaction, pointing out details that didn't match what they were used to seeing. Some observers claimed the bump appeared to change size on different days, while others said it even looked slightly different within the same appearance. Those observations quickly spread online, adding more fuel to an already intense conversation. One moment that really got people talking was the Fashion Awards event, where Meghan was seen holding her belly throughout the night, something some commentators described as unusual. Then there's the clip people keep bringing up, where she briefly crouched while wearing high heels. Some midwives later commented that the movement looked challenging for someone in the later stages of pregnancy.
When I was pregnant, and Harry says, oh, there was a little discussion before we got married. Well, something's wrong right there.
And that only pushed the discussion even further into the spotlight.
Amen.
And there's another moment people still can't stop talking about, the purple dress and red coat appearance. Observers claim the bump looked positioned differently before and after a meeting on the very same day, and that detail has kept people watching those clips over and over again. Lady C also pointed out something many completely overlooked, the exact wording used in the birth announcements. Both statements said the child was born for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, not to them. She argues that in precise English, children are usually described as being born to the parents who carried the pregnancy. So when the phrase born for appears, she suggests it can sometimes hint at a different kind of arrangement. What really grabbed attention is that the same wording reportedly appeared in 2 separate announcements. Some people believe it was just a simple wording choice, nothing more. But Lady C strongly disagrees. She believes phrasing like that doesn't just happen by accident, especially in official royal statements where every word is carefully chosen. Then Tom Bower's reported investigation adds another layer to the story. His team looked into records connected to Portland Hospital in London and Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital in California, 2 locations often linked to the births.
Meghan left Britain and then did the Oprah Winfrey interview has been really poisonous.
He has more power than the courts and the king. That's what he's trying to do. He's getting the government to undermine the legal system and the institution of the monarchy. It couldn't be simpler. Harry has security when he comes to this country. It's assessed on a case-by-case basis. If he stays in a palace, and he's offered to stay in palaces, and refuses to do so, because he's trying to manipulate the system.
But according to ongoing discussions, they didn't find the kind of clear, publicly confirmed documentation many expected to see, and that's exactly what's keeping the conversation going strong. That lack of clarity has kept debates active online, and it's only getting louder as more people weigh in. Then came a major TV moment, when an American network was given exclusive access to Archie's first public appearance. The same network already had connections to Oprah Winfrey, who later worked with Harry and Meghan on several projects. Tom Bower's take adds even more intrigue. He suggests that the secrecy around certain moments may not have been only about privacy, but could also connect to media strategy and business interests. That idea has people questioning even more about what was really happening behind the scenes. Then there's a moment Harry created himself, and people are still replaying it again and again. During a short interview near some stables, he said the baby had changed so much in 2 weeks. Meghan, standing right beside him, quickly corrected it. 2 days. 2 weeks, 2 days. It was a quick exchange and no one followed up at the time, but that clip stuck with viewers and keeps resurfacing in discussions. Behind the scenes, reports claim the pressure has been building fast. Sources describe Harry as frustrated, losing sleep, pacing late at night, and constantly checking coverage as people continue to analyze every small detail. The spotlight hasn't eased up, it's only getting more intense. There are also claims that legal advisors have been weighing serious action against Lady Colin Campbell and Tom Bower, but Lady C's response caught a lot of people off guard. No panic, no hesitation, no softening her position at all.
Tom Bower, where he doesn't go there. He doesn't go there. But he does go there as far as the fact that they wanted to keep the birth private and all the secrecy around that, and even the fact that...
She responded directly saying, "Let him sue me," and that line hit hard across media and online conversations. Lady C clearly understands the weight of a statement like that. She knows exactly what stepping into a courtroom could mean, and what might happen once legal rules take over, because the same courtroom Prince Harry is reportedly considering could become the place where claims, sources and records are fully examined in public view. Tom Bower responded with that same level of confidence. No retreat, no backing down. He has said he stands by his work, explaining that his research includes sources, documents, testimony and material that can't simply be dismissed by legal pressure.
He had to admit that actually those stories had been published by other newspapers, days prior, and that's where they got the information from. Or the fact sometimes the palace released information themselves and Prince Harry wasn't aware of it, or the fact that, it was just sources and friends or people close to Prince Harry.
The message from both sides feels clear. Go ahead, file it. Legal analysts say this could get very complicated if it turns into a defamation case. The person bringing the claim would need to prove the statements were false using solid evidence, records, timelines, and verifiable facts. That kind of material gets examined line by line, and once that process starts, things can become far more revealing than anyone expected. Other legal battles have already shown how quickly cases like this can open doors to deeper scrutiny. And in past situations involving media coverage around Prince Harry, once things reached that level, the details didn't stay hidden for long. It's already been acknowledged that some of these stories first showed up in newspapers or came from sources close to royal circles. At times, even palace communications have played a role in how information reached the press. But if a case like this actually moves forward, one word suddenly takes over everything: discovery. This is the stage where both sides can demand evidence tied directly to the claims, and it can open doors people never expected to see opened. That's exactly why so many legal commentators warn that lawsuits don't stay neat or controlled. They can expand fast, pulling in details that were never meant to be public. What starts as one issue can quickly grow into something much bigger, with new layers being exposed along the way.
Is it possible the ghostwriter dislikes Harry? I know people who know him. I've heard interesting things about him. I know he's, as I have said previously, very into the 12-step program and the whole druggy-alky business. It is not the job of a ghostwriter to do anything but put the thoughts of the incompetent who requires a ghostwriter.
Which is very revelatory, as you know, about Meghan and Harry. I got absolutely no help from the palace whatsoever, on the contrary.
The public reaction has been intense, and it's not slowing down. Comment sections are flooded with the same message repeated again and again. Take it to court. Many people say they want to see everything tested under real legal questioning instead of interviews or media statements. Because court is a completely different environment. No polished talking points, no selective answers, no carefully managed messaging. Inside a courtroom, witnesses face direct questions, and every answer is put on the record. There's no room to reshape the narrative once it's said out loud under oath. That's what makes this moment feel so high stakes, with so many people watching closely. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Harry and Meghan have often spoken about transparency and wanting their truth to be heard, which is why this situation is drawing even more attention. At the same time, critics argue that legal pressure is now being directed at authors who are raising questions that in theory could be addressed with clear documentation. That tension is exactly what's driving this story forward and keeping it in the spotlight. Meanwhile, the royal household has remained completely silent through most of it. No detailed responses, no strong pushback, just the usual line that the palace does not engage in speculation. It's a short statement, but it shuts everything down without giving anything away. And the reason this story keeps pulling so much attention isn't just about headlines or online debates. It runs deeper than that.
I think more people want something in-depth in terms of the review of the Tom Bower book than don't. So some people just wanted one episode, other people want more. Is married to a professional journalist who was the editress of the Evening Standard.
British royal succession laws have been in place for centuries, and anything that even hints at uncertainty around those traditions is always going to spark serious interest and intense discussion. And one key principle has always stood at the centre of it all: heirs must be born of the body. That rule has long been treated as a core part of how the royal line is defined and protected. So if the questions raised by Lady Colin Campbell and Tom Bower were ever to gain real legal traction, the impact could be massive. At that point, this wouldn't just be talk anymore. It would move into serious legal territory tied directly to royal succession. And if anything ever reached a courtroom where official answers were required, the implications for Archie and Lilibet's place in that line would be huge. That's why, according to several commentators, constitutional lawyers are said to be quietly discussing this situation behind closed doors. Nothing loud or public, just careful conversations happening out of view, where every detail is being considered. And there's another point that royal watchers keep bringing up. The visible distance between King Charles and the Sussex children has not gone unnoticed. When people compare it to William and Catherine's family, the contrast stands out clearly. Their children are often seen in photos, public appearances, celebrations, and official events, with a strong sense of connection on display. But when it comes to Archie and Lilibet, the public sees very little, just occasional glimpses, and that's it. Some insiders suggest that distance could be intentional, possibly a cautious decision to avoid drawing more attention to an already sensitive situation. And through all of this, one idea keeps coming up again and again: a DNA test. Lady C has mentioned it, Bower has mentioned it, and countless people online continue to repeat it with growing frustration.
Well, he does it because he needs a profile. That's the only way they can get money, by showing the profile. And for Netflix, everything is built around the future documentary series to promote the Sussex.
I had always looked at it more as, oh, she landed this prince. That's what she was out for. We know that she was hunting for someone of wealth, of notoriety in Great Britain, and she landed, the biggest you could land. But it worked the other way too. He was feeling irrelevant. She comes along. She's a, somewhat well-known person, or at least that was his impression. And she's mixed race. She could elevate his star as well. It worked both ways.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, what I discovered was, of course, that she was hunting for a man in England from 2013 onwards.
Many believe that if everything is exactly as presented, one simple test could clear the air immediately and shut down the entire debate. Critics argue that a single move like that could change everything overnight, which is exactly why the pressure and speculation refuse to fade. It would seriously damage Lady C's credibility, shut down Bower's investigation, and silence years of rumours in a single moment. That's exactly why the same question keeps coming up again and again. Why hasn't that simple step happened? With every passing day, the lack of a clear answer only raises more eyebrows and keeps people talking. And instead of direct clarification, each new legal warning seems to add even more tension. Some observers are starting to believe that transparency might be the one thing Harry and Meghan are trying to avoid. That idea alone is fueling even more debate across social media and public discussions. Tom Bower has been especially direct about how he views the pressure behind all of this. In his opinion, life after stepping away from royal duties depends heavily on their public image, the devoted family, the humanitarian identity, and the powerful story that captured global attention. That image, according to his perspective, is everything. Critics argue that even small cracks in that image could lead to serious consequences, and right now those cracks are becoming harder for some people to ignore. Bower reportedly said they are cornered while discussing the situation, suggesting the pressure is building from all sides. He believes the more the couple tries to control the narrative through legal warnings, the more it raises suspicion among observers. And that reaction is only making the situation feel even bigger, louder, and more intense with every new development.
I wonder, when you watched Meghan Markle speak out, what went through your mind?
Public service, it's a bright, sharp, hot spotlight, and most people don't understand it, nor should they. The thing that I always keep in mind is that none of this is about us in public service. It's about the people that we serve. I always try to push the light back out and focus it on the folks that we're actually here to serve.
Accusation, Oprah Winfrey. Also, I think they're reserving that sort of attack for Meghan's own book, for which we must now look forward in the year's time.
Lady C has also been very direct when it comes to the financial side of all this. She claims Meghan once believed Prince Harry had access to massive wealth when they got married. But in reality, much of his financial stability was tied to the royal system he later stepped away from, and that creates a complicated situation. They still need the spotlight to maintain their global image, but that same spotlight brings pressure, more scrutiny, more questions, and more attention on every single controversy connected to them. It's a constant cycle that doesn't seem to slow down. So here's where things stand right now. Lady Colin Campbell and Tom Bower are not backing down at all. If anything, the idea of legal action seems to have made them even more confident in what they claim they could present if this ever reached a courtroom. At the same time, the Samantha Markle deposition process is already moving forward, the palace remains silent, and legal experts are watching every move closely. Across media and online discussions, one phrase from Lady C keeps getting louder: "Let him sue me." That line alone has added serious intensity to an already heated situation. Now the real question is, will Prince Harry actually take that step? Or will this stay in the world of public debate without ever reaching a courtroom? And if it does go legal, what do you think would actually come out once everything is examined under oath? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear what you think about this situation. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with anyone following the story, because this is far from over and things could shift at any moment.
Moon bump theory.
Well, basically, it suggests that Meghan didn't actually give birth to these children and that she was wearing a prosthetic bump. And of course, lots of medical experts have come out looking at that video and saying it's just impossible for someone who's literally 9 months pregnant and about to give birth to dance in that way.
She delivered it like an actress delivered it, and Oprah responded going, wow.
Something big just dropped, and it's way bigger than anyone saw coming. After years of whispers, side eyes, and quiet talk behind closed doors, royal photographer Arthur Edwards is finally stepping out and saying what a lot of people have been thinking about Meghan Markle. And it's got people seriously talking. This isn't random gossip floating around online. Arthur Edwards has spent decades behind the camera, capturing some of the most unforgettable royal moments ever. He's been right there, up close.
Oh, I was there. Hated the day. The day was a miserable day. I mean, it was a worst royal engagement I ever did, a royal wedding I ever did.
Seeing everything with his own eyes. No filters, no spin. And now he's speaking out in a way that's hard to brush off. People have questioned Meghan Markle's moves, her image, and how things really played out behind palace walls. But what Arthur is sharing adds a whole new twist to the story. It makes you stop and think. Wait. Was there more happening this entire time? And the timing feels just as shocking. Why speak now after staying mostly quiet for so long? What changed? And what did he actually see that pushed him to finally say something out loud? This isn't the clean, polished version people are used to hearing. It's direct, detailed, and already stirring up major reactions. Royal life usually runs on a quiet system built over generations. Everything moves slow, controlled, and carefully planned. Every appearance, every step, it's all measured and presented in a very specific way over time. But when Meghan stepped into that world, things didn't just shift, they flipped fast. Instead of following the usual path, she brought in a modern, high-visibility style that stood out instantly. It wasn't about blending in, it was about being seen.
Are you buying that excuse that Meghan Markle used a fake belly to protect her real belly? I'm not buying this.
Actually, this does look like a moon bump to me.
Her approach leaned into visibility in a way people weren't used to. There was emotional storytelling, carefully timed moments, and a strong sense of control over how things were shown. and that kept people watching closely. It created a completely different kind of attention, less about formal royal duties, more about personal narrative. And that contrast? It got people talking fast, because it didn't match what the public had seen for decades. Now here's where things really started raising eyebrows. Royal pregnancies usually follow a clear pattern. Public appearances, photographers capturing each stage, and a steady flow of images that give people that classic royal moment.
And I travelled the world with him, and I did really enjoy working with him. But, now I really don't care if I ever see him again, because the way he's behaved towards the king and our queen and his brother and his sister-in-law is appalling.
It's something audiences expect without even realising it. But this time, that pattern didn't play out the same way. It wasn't just different, it felt like something important was missing. And that's where Arthur Edwards comes in. A photographer who has documented the royal family across generations just shared a detail that made the whole situation even more confusing. He revealed that during that time he was actually told to keep his distance, and that raised a lot of eyebrows. This is someone who's been right in the middle of some of the most important and personal royal moments in history, from huge public events to quiet close-up glimpses of Princess Diana. His camera has always been part of the story, so hearing that he was suddenly pushed back like that, people noticed fast. That move didn't just change who had access. It changed how the public experienced everything. The usual way people connect to royal milestones through photos and real-time moments was suddenly gone, and without that familiar lens, things started to feel off. There was a gap, something people couldn't fully explain, and it only made the curiosity grow stronger about what was really happening behind the scenes. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Even without the usual photo coverage, the attention didn't fade away. It just shifted direction.
To see or hear Meghan Markle's belly pop, you're going to see these people's faces. And I can tell you that one of these people is now speaking out.
Instead of traditional media moments, the spotlight moved toward controlled platforms like interviews, documentary-style features, and major media deals. Meghan stayed highly visible just through a completely different route. And that kind of shift, it doesn't just happen randomly, it shows a clear change in how attention was being handled. She didn't just step into the royal family, she stepped straight into the centre of modern media and knew exactly how to work it. Almost right away, every move felt sharp and intentional. Whether she was speaking, showing up somewhere, or even staying silent, it all seemed like it had a purpose behind it. People weren't just watching anymore. They were trying to figure out the reason behind every move. This goes beyond titles, ceremonies, or old-school royal traditions. It starts to look like a bigger shift in how public image is controlled at a higher level. And one question kept coming up again and again. Why are there so few widely recognised natural pregnancy photos of Meghan Markle? That's not a small detail in the royal world. So when Arthur Edwards finally spoke after staying quiet for so long, it only pushed more attention toward that exact question. Royal stories usually follow a familiar pattern. Big announcements, public excitement, cameras flashing everywhere, and those iconic balcony moments people remember for years. That's what the public expects without even thinking about it. But this time, the story didn't start that way. Instead, it opened with a noticeable gap, a shift in how things were shown, and a level of media distance that stood out immediately. And when you compare it, the difference is hard to ignore. When Kate Middleton steps out, it quickly turns into a huge media moment. Photos everywhere, headlines rolling in fast, coverage non-stop. But when Meghan stepped out, the reaction felt completely different. The tone shifted, access tightened, and the usual media flow seemed to slow down all at once. And people definitely noticed that change. Arthur Edwards, who has spent over 40 years documenting the royal family up close, saw that shift unfold right in front of him. Clearly, this isn't someone just guessing from the outside. Arthur Edwards has been right there in the middle of it all. He's witnessed some of the biggest moments in royal history, from massive public events to deeply personal milestones. His photos didn't just capture history, they helped shape how people see the monarchy over time.
I agree. I'm not a Meghan Markle fan, and I don't defend her. And there's all sorts of inconsistencies and hypocrisies. But you know, she's an actress. She's not the brightest cookie in the basket. There's no way Kate would do anything like that.
So when he points out that something felt off, people don't just ignore it; they pay attention fast. And according to him, when Meghan's major life chapter was unfolding, the usual royal structure just wasn't there. No standard photo ops, no familiar media setup, no clear access for photographers to capture those expected moments. Instead, there was this silence, and not the calm, routine kind. This was different, the kind of silence that instantly makes people start asking questions. And strangely, that silence pulled in even more attention than constant coverage ever could. It stood out in a way that felt impossible to ignore. For someone often linked to sharing personal experiences and shaping her own story, this approach felt like a sharp contrast. It wasn't just about being less visible, it was about flipping the entire idea of visibility on its head. Even experienced photographers and media insiders were left trying to figure out what caused such a clear shift in how everything was handled. The questions didn't just pop up, they spread fast and kept building. People started wondering what was really going on behind the scenes. Was this about protecting personal space? Or was it something more strategic, like controlling every part of the narrative? Those are two completely different moves. Privacy is expected at that level, no doubt. But when it starts looking like full restriction, people notice right away. And when that level of control lines up with official systems and tightly managed coordination, it creates a situation that draws even more attention. It stops feeling like a normal adjustment and starts looking carefully planned. That's when things shift from casual curiosity to full-on analysis. People begin connecting dots step by step, trying to make sense of everything. At the same time, Meghan didn't disappear from the spotlight at all. In fact, she stayed visible, but in a very specific, controlled way. Appearances were selective, content felt curated, and every moment shown to the public seemed chosen for a reason. So people were still seeing her, just not through the usual royal access they had gotten used to over the years. And that difference made everything feel even more intense. On one side, you had the traditional royal system, which usually allows open media coverage during major life moments. On the other side, a modern approach built on timing, precision, and tight control over what gets released. This wasn't a small shift. It felt like two completely different systems clashing at the same time. Meanwhile, the media didn't back off. They leaned in even harder. News outlets kept asking questions, speculation kept growing, and the demand for clear answers only got stronger. Expectations built up quickly, especially with so many missing pieces in the story. And through all of this, Arthur Edwards stayed patient, watching closely, waiting for that one defining image, the kind that usually clears everything up in royal history. But that moment never came, and that absence, it only made everything feel even more unusual. Because in royal history, those defining images almost always exist. Those moments usually become part of the royal timeline, locked in, remembered, talked about for years. So when that expected moment didn't show up, it stood out even more than non-stop coverage ever could. And then suddenly, everything shifted again. It started with a short clip, just a few shaky seconds, but it spread fast and grabbed attention instantly. In that moment, Meghan Markle, visibly pregnant, lowers into a squat, stands back up, and turns, with an ease that caught a lot of people off guard. It looked simple at first, but the internet didn't see it that way.
Meghan Markle has posted a cringy video of her and Prince Harry dancing in a hospital.
That clip got replayed again and again, with people trying to figure out exactly what they were watching. And online, things moved fast. Communities jumped in immediately, breaking it down frame by frame. People paused it, zoomed in, slowed it down, and replayed it from every angle possible. What seemed like a normal movement suddenly turned into a full-blown debate, pulling in thousands of opinions. Almost instantly, some viewers started questioning it, wondering if that kind of movement matched what they expected to see. Others pushed back just as hard, pointing out that every pregnancy is different and doesn't follow one rule. That back and forth created a clear divide, and it only made the conversation louder. Then came a flood of added opinions. Medical viewpoints got mentioned, personal stories were shared, and suddenly everyone had something to say. Platforms like Twitter and Reddit filled up fast, with users building timelines, comparing clips, and stacking up different theories. And it didn't slow down. It kept growing hour by hour as more people jumped in. Over on YouTube, creators took it even further, turning that short clip into long breakdown videos. They analysed every detail, replayed moments, and treated it like something that needed a full explanation. What started as a quick, viral moment turned into extended content that kept the topic alive and circulating everywhere. The tone shifted just as quickly as the clip spread. Instead of celebration, the focus moved toward curiosity, doubt, and constant questioning. Headlines leaned into the mystery, pulling even more attention into the situation. The more people talked about it, the bigger it became. At the same time, official responses stayed minimal. There wasn't much said to directly address the growing noise online, and that silence? It didn't calm anything down. It made people even more curious. Without clear answers, speculation filled the space and kept building momentum. Meanwhile, Meghan's public image still appeared polished and controlled. Photos and videos showed soft lighting, clean visuals, and carefully presented moments that felt more styled than spontaneous.
Obviously, when William was born and Harry was born and George and Charlotte and Louis, we got great pictures outside the hospital. I remember, and William and Catherine especially, they made such an effort to show the whole world their new baby.
Archie Harrison, Mountbatten Windsor, was the name and had nothing to do with the royal family.
Everything looked intentional, refined, almost too perfect. And that made some viewers look even closer, searching for something more natural and unfiltered. Then another detail came out, and it added a whole new layer. Arthur Edwards revealed that photographers were given clear instructions to avoid certain angles and specific moments. That one statement hit hard, because it changed how people started looking at everything that came before it. For some, it still pointed to privacy and protecting boundaries, but for others it felt like something more controlled and restrictive. Once that idea entered the conversation, it didn't fade. It spread fast. Theories started stacking up, opinions became stronger, and the divide between perspectives grew wider with each passing day. One question kept repeating across every discussion. If everything was simple and straightforward, why did it feel so tightly managed? Why did access seem so limited during such an important time? That tension between what people expected and what they were seeing kept the topic alive and constantly evolving. Every major story reaches a point where a new voice changes the direction completely, and in this case, that shift didn't come from an official spokesperson or a royal insider. It came from someone unexpected, someone who claimed to have noticed small details that never made it into the public view. She wasn't part of the royal system, didn't hold any title, and didn't have formal access. Just someone close enough to observe but not positioned at the centre. And the moment she suggested that the public version of events might not fully reflect everything happening behind the scenes, the reaction around her changed quickly. The shift was immediate, and noticeable conversations that once felt open started to slow down. Messages that would normally get responses suddenly went quiet. Opportunities to speak or share seemed to disappear without explanation. It created a strange atmosphere that people could feel even if no one directly addressed it. There was a kind of unspoken tension that settled in, not loud or obvious.
Remember when Diana was delivering Harry or William? There was complete quiet. No one knew. Cameras couldn't get even anywhere near the hospital.
Sure, but we
let
didn't have
alone
mobile
in the room.
phones then.
What?
We didn't have mobile phones then.
But it was so private, and there's a dignity with privacy.
Yes.
And I certainly wouldn't, if I were pregnant, dance like
Yeah, but subtle enough to make people think twice. It felt like a quiet signal, almost like a warning without words suggesting that certain topics were better left alone, and that feeling only added more weight to everything that had already been building. For people who have followed the royal world for years, this kind of situation didn't feel completely new. Moments like this have come up before, where even small comments or personal observations seem to bring unexpected consequences. There's already a history of individuals speaking out and then suddenly finding themselves pushed to the side. Names like Paul Page, a former royal guard, have been mentioned in the past as examples of how quickly things can shift when private experiences become public conversations. According to various reports, this situation appeared to follow a similar pattern. What began as normal, polite communication slowly started to change tone over time. Interactions that once felt easy became more distant, and conversations reportedly carried a different kind of weight at the same time. Opportunities that were once available seemed to fade away without any clear explanation. But here's where things took an unexpected turn. The more pressure it seemed she was facing, the more attention her claims started gaining online. Instead of fading into the background, her words began circulating even faster. People started asking a simple but powerful question. Why would such a strong reaction follow something that was described as a small observation? That contrast made the entire situation stand out even more. She didn't have a large audience, no major platform, and no media machine supporting her voice. But sometimes attention doesn't come from reach, it comes from reaction. The way things unfolded around her made people look twice, not just at what she said, but at how others seemed to respond to it, and that's where things become even more interesting. In structured environments like the royal system, loyalty and alignment have always been a big part of how this whole system runs.
The thing that strikes me is her lack of understanding and recognition of the role that she had or has in the royal family. And, you know, both of them have been on the record repeatedly saying they don't want to be living their lives through the lens of a camera and in a goldfish bowl and all of that. And then they take the camera into the most private of rooms where you're about to deliver your...
It's not just about what gets said in public. It's about staying inside very clear boundaries at all times. And the moment someone steps even slightly outside of that space, the response can come fast, and it's usually controlled behind the scenes. Because behind the polished images, the public appearances, and those perfectly timed statements, there's always a deeper system working quietly in the background. Nothing is random. Communication is planned, shaped, and adjusted, depending on the situation. Every detail matters, from what gets shared to what gets held back, and even those moments where nothing is said at all. And sometimes, those quiet gaps, they raise more questions than any headline ever could. The conversation around Meghan kept growing. Some observers started noticing a different pattern. It didn't look like an attempt to completely shut things down. It felt more like the story was being guided in a very specific direction. Not loud reactions, not public pushback, just quiet, precise moves happening behind the scenes. Because if there's one thing the royal system has mastered over time, it's how to respond under pressure. When attention builds, the reaction isn't chaotic or rushed. It's measured, organized, and carefully timed. That kind of approach doesn't erase controversy, but it definitely reshapes how people see it and talk about it. It works almost like a long-standing public relations machine built over generations. Every situation is handled with control, awareness, and a deep understanding of public perception. Nothing is rushed, nothing is sluchino, and every move connects to a bigger picture most people never fully see. Behind closed doors, reports suggested there were ongoing discussions about media strategy. Every statement had to be reviewed, adjusted, and approved before going public. Every word mattered. Every sentence carried weight.
Meghan at the Albert Hall. How many weeks pregnant was she supposed to be? Was it about 8 weeks? And she looks as if she's at least 5 months pregnant. And also, why is the belly several shades browner than anywhere else? It's not supposed to be brown.
Nothing moved forward unless it lined up perfectly with how it would be received. And that kind of pressure? It's intense. No one wants to be the one who says the wrong thing or adds more attention to an already growing situation. That's why responses often come out cautious, controlled, and sometimes very limited. And as online conversations started picking up speed, one phrase kept coming back again and again. Never explain. It sounds simple, calm, even, reassuring at first, but in reality, it often leads to silence instead of clear answers. And that silence can spark a completely different reaction, because the internet doesn't just forget and move on. Once something catches attention, it sticks. It gets shared, reposted, revisited, again and again. Silence doesn't erase the questions, it can actually make them feel bigger. While all of this was unfolding, Meghan continued building a strong, polished image on a global stage. Her appearances, projects, and messaging stayed consistent and carefully presented. But at the same time, back in London, things felt way more complicated. Behind the scenes, officials were reportedly trying to balance two difficult things at once: holding on to tradition while also adapting to a fast-changing media world, and managing both at the same time. That was never going to be simple. They were walking a very fine line, and it showed. On one side, there was pressure to protect the monarchy's reputation at all costs. On the other, there was a clear effort to avoid looking too controlling or overly involved in the public eye. That balancing act created a response style that felt careful, controlled, and at times, almost too cautious. Because of that, communication started shifting in a noticeable way. Statements became less direct, updates felt more limited, and the overall flow of information tightened up fast. It wasn't that nothing was being said, it's that everything felt filtered, measured, and carefully chosen. Press briefings started sounding more vague, with answers that didn't fully match the questions being asked. Even experienced figures like Arthur Edwards, who spent decades with close royal access, seemed to be kept at a distance. Moments that once felt open and routine suddenly looked restricted, and people noticed that change right away. And that shift started to mean something bigger. It wasn't just about one situation anymore, it pointed to a wider pattern in how information was being handled. Nothing was openly denied or removed, but it felt like key details were being carefully managed, organized, and kept just out of reach.
She is literally kneeling all the way down. One of those people reached out to me, but not before this person reached out to the newspapers, complaining that the palace was literally threatening her, that the palace had tried to bribe her, and when that didn't work, because she really dislikes what's happening and she wants to come clean, and she has been trying to tell people.
At the center of it all, the monarchy has always relied on two core things: tradition and stability. Every move, every decision, every response connects back to protecting those foundations, especially when public conversations start getting into more sensitive territory. And when discussions began touching on timelines, royal titles, and internal processes, the tone shifted again. These aren't light topics. They go straight to how the entire system works and how people understand it. That's when everything started feeling more serious and way more closely watched. For generations, the line of succession and everything around it has been handled with extreme care. Even small questions can carry serious weight in that world. So, when online conversations started pushing into that space, the usual calm approach suddenly felt more urgent and much more controlled. At one point, there were even rumours about a press secretary known for giving answers that sounded complete, but didn't actually reveal much. Responses became so carefully worded that even direct questions didn't lead to clear answers. People were left listening closely, trying to read between the lines, but often walking away with nothing solid. History has already shown one thing clearly. Anything involving the royal family can turn sensitive very quickly, especially when personal decisions become public discussion. Situations like this have happened before, and every time they show how fast attention can build, and how carefully everything has to be handled. But now, it's a completely different environment. This isn't the kind of era where headlines fade quietly. This is a fast-moving digital world where reactions happen instantly. Clips go viral in minutes, opinions spread across platforms, and conversations don't slow down, they keep evolving in real time. Every little detail matters in this kind of space. A single image, a quick pause, even a small expression, it can all be captured, shared, and analysed again and again. What used to stay behind closed doors, now it can turn into a global conversation overnight. Almost instantly, the shift from private moments to full public discussion started happening faster than ever. What used to stay quiet didn't stay quiet for long. Commentators didn't just sit back and watch, they jumped right into the story. They reacted, broke everything down, and kept the conversation moving non-stop. What once felt like distant royal tradition suddenly started looking more like ongoing content, with people following every update in real time. And that's exactly where things took a sharper turn. The focus moved away from long-standing roles and structure and shifted toward how fast public perception could change. Not over months, not even weeks, sometimes within hours, because in today's media world, it doesn't take a massive event to shake things up. Just one unexpected moment, one short clip, or even a small detail that doesn't quite match, and suddenly it's everywhere. And once that kind of attention hits, it spreads fast and pulls more people into the conversation. In this situation, attention locked onto a detail that most people never expected to question. Early reports claimed that a well-known medical professional was involved in the birth of the Sussex child. It sounded clear, structured, and exactly like what people expect from official statements.
On May 6th at 3:02 a.m., Frogmore Cottage. This is a public announcement. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex used the services of a surrogate. We apologize for any misunderstandings. To this day, nobody has debunked that tweet as fake. In order for a child to be in the line of succession, it has to come from the body of the woman. Why would Meghan Markle be faking all those big stomachs? You know, that big belly, the belly swaying back and forth. She was huge. She was overdue. Now when Spare came out, we know that story is absolute horseshit.
But then, something didn't line up. A separate statement connected to the doctor's family seemed to suggest a different version of events. And that contrast, people caught it immediately. Just like that, uncertainty stepped into a story that originally sounded straightforward. Now there were two different narratives moving at the same time. On one side, the palace presented one version. On the other, parts of the media started discussing something else. And that split, it created confusion fast. People didn't know which version actually showed the full picture, and that one inconsistency didn't just fade away, it flipped the entire conversation. For a system known for being precise and tightly controlled, even the smallest contradiction can stand out in a huge way. And once people noticed it, the attention didn't stay contained, it exploded. Online spaces reacted instantly. Conversations spread across platforms, with users comparing timelines, official statements, and every tiny detail they could find. Regular viewers turned into full-on analysts, breaking things down piece by piece, trying to figure out what didn't match. What started as a small detail quickly became a major talking point. It pulled even more attention into a story that was already under the spotlight. The more people looked, the more the questions showed up, and the harder it became to ignore. But instead of stepping in to clear things up, the response followed a very familiar pattern: silence. No detailed explanation, no direct correction, just a pause that felt intentional and carefully controlled. And that silence, it didn't calm anything down, it did the exact opposite. It left everything wide open with no clear direction for the public to follow. And the moment that gap appeared, it filled up fast, with theories, questions, and non-stop speculation. Because when people don't get clear answers, they don't just move on. They start connecting the dots themselves. Every missing piece turned into something people focused on. Every unanswered question became its own discussion. And it just kept circulating. In online spaces, stories like this don't fade quietly, especially when there's already a spotlight on them. As things slowly started to settle, a bigger picture began to take shape. The royal system may be highly experienced when it comes to handling internal matters and controlling information. But the modern digital world plays by completely different rules. Information now moves fast, almost impossible to contain. Once attention builds, it doesn't just disappear. It keeps cycling through posts, videos, and conversations. People revisit it, reanalyze it, and keep it alive long after the original moment has passed. There's an unspoken rule online. If something isn't clearly explained, it won't be ignored. It'll be investigated from every angle. And that's how stories turn into trending topics, repeated clips, and non-stop analysis that refuses to go away. But in royal tradition, silence has never meant nothing. It actually carries meaning, without saying a single word. It's not just about staying quiet, it's about sending a message without speaking directly. And no one understood that better than the late Queen. She didn't rely on constant, public statements to shape how people saw things. Instead, she used subtle details, small, quiet signals that only careful observers would notice. People who followed royal appearances closely knew one thing: nothing was random. Every object, every position, every background detail was placed with intention. One moment that really stood out happened during a Christmas broadcast. At first, it seemed small, but the impact was much bigger than anyone expected. Viewers noticed that a framed photo, one that had appeared before, was suddenly gone. No explanation, no mention, just an empty space where it used to be. At a quick glance, it could have been brushed off as a simple change. But for those paying attention, it didn't feel random at all. In royal settings, nothing is placed without careful thought. Every detail goes through layers of decisions, so even the smallest change can feel intentional. Some tried to explain it away. Maybe it was just a layout update, a simple refresh. But long-time royal watchers weren't convinced. They understand how structured these appearances are, and how rare it is for something to change without a reason behind it. Even the smallest shift can carry weight. When something familiar disappears, people notice, and questions follow, because in that world, it's not just about what's said, it's about what's quietly shown. The Queen's style was never about loud responses or public back and forth. She stayed calm, controlled, and precise at all times, choosing subtle moves over big reactions. And that approach became part of how the monarchy handles sensitive moments. That one broadcast proved just how powerful silence and small details can be. Without a single word being spoken, a quiet adjustment sent a strong signal, and people didn't miss it. It was subtle, easy to overlook at first, but incredibly effective for anyone paying close attention. That's really how this system works. It's not built on loud announcements or fast reactions. It runs on precision timing and carefully placed signals.
How fair do you think it is to say that this has been driven by Meghan?
I think you've got to look. Harry was the greatest of all the royals as far as we were concerned. And he suddenly turned into probably, as I say, the most unhappiest and difficult to work with. And there's only one common denominator in that, is when he got married.
No confrontation, no direct explanation, just small, controlled shifts that carry meaning without ever saying it out loud. And history shows something people have picked up on over time. When things suddenly go quiet at that level, it doesn't always mean everything is fine. In many cases, it means something deeper is happening behind the scenes. And what came next only made that silence feel even more important. Most royal stories build toward a clear, visible moment. There's usually a point where everything clicks into place and the public gets a full picture. But this situation, it didn't follow that pattern at all. Right when questions around the birth were reaching their peak, attention suddenly shifted. Fast. All eyes turned to one place, Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital. Almost overnight, that location became a major focus. It was mentioned everywhere, tied directly into the story. So naturally, people expected something simple: confirmation, clarity, a clear answer to settle everything. At first, it seemed like that's exactly what happened. A public congratulations message appeared online, and it gave the impression that everything was straightforward and confirmed. But not long after, things started to feel less clear. New comments began to introduce uncertainty, especially as conversations around certain clips and timelines started spreading online. Suddenly, what looked simple didn't feel so simple anymore. And the response that followed? It didn't give a direct yes or no. Instead, it leaned on general policies and timing, pointing to guidelines that were in place during that period. The wording felt careful, structured, and very controlled. And because of that, people started reading it in completely different ways. That's where things really got complicated. When clear answers aren't given, people don't just stop. They dig deeper. Some saw the response as standard procedure. Others felt like it was avoiding the real details on purpose. And that kind of communication? It doesn't end a conversation, it stretches it out. Without clear answers, the discussion keeps growing. More opinions, more theories, more breakdowns. And in a fast-moving digital world, that only makes things more intense. Instead of settling the situation, the careful wording added another layer to the story. It kept people locked in, questioning, analysing, and trying to figure out what was actually being said, and what might have been left out. Online communities didn't hesitate. They jumped in right away. People started digging into every detail they could find, comparing images, studying backgrounds, zooming in on the smallest things. Nothing was too minor. Every detail became part of the bigger puzzle. Screenshots spread fast, clips got replayed again and again, and side-by-side comparisons started flooding timelines across every platform. What began as simple curiosity quickly turned into a full breakdown process. Regular users switched into analyst mode, picking apart everything, from room layouts to where equipment was placed. Nothing felt too small to matter. Every tiny detail became part of a bigger puzzle people were trying to solve. At the same time, the hospital didn't change its approach. The response stayed consistent, professional, measured and focused on privacy. No extra comments, no deep explanations, just the same steady message repeated even as the noise kept getting louder. And while all of that was happening, Meghan's public image didn't shift at all. Every appearance, every visual, every release stayed polished and carefully controlled. That consistency stood out. Everything looked refined, intentional and tightly curated in a way that made direct challenges difficult. And that contrast? People noticed it right away. In a time where everything is shared instantly, every moment, every angle, this situation still held unanswered questions, and that alone made people stop and look even closer, trying to figure out what might be missing. Just when it seemed like the conversation might start slowing down, a familiar voice pulled it right back into focus. Arthur Edwards, someone with decades of first-hand experience around the royal family, spoke again, and one line stood out above everything else. "We were told to stay away." That statement carried serious weight. It wasn't just about missing photos or limited access anymore. It pointed to something bigger. When people started putting everything side by side, the restricted access, the controlled visuals, the carefully managed responses, it didn't feel like random decisions anymore. It started to look like a pattern, and that realization only made the conversation stronger. More attention, more discussion, more people pulled into a story that just wouldn't settle. When everything gets lined up, the lack of photography, the small details that don't fully match, the carefully worded responses, even outside confirmations that seem slightly off, it starts forming something much bigger than a single moment. It stops feeling isolated. It starts feeling connected, like multiple pieces building into one ongoing story. And that's where the real intrigue kicks in. Because this was never just about one image or one event. It turned into something deeper, a closer look at how a global institution manages its image under constant public attention. In a world that expects openness, every controlled move stands out even more.
I would say step one would be to confirm this room, find out where it was, find out that very room, find out which room it was, and go look at it. If it's at that hospital, wherever it is she says she was, go make sure that's the hospital room, that it exists there, because it could be somewhere else, who knows.
One explanation people point to is privacy. Public figures do have the right to set boundaries. That part is completely fair. But when those boundaries look this tight, this consistent, and this noticeable across multiple moments, people naturally start asking more questions. The pattern becomes harder to ignore. Another angle that keeps coming up is control, not in an extreme way, but in terms of shaping what the public sees, what gets shared, and what stays out of view. Because in today's media world, controlling the flow of information can be just as powerful as the information itself. And no matter which side people land on, the conversation isn't slowing down anytime soon. The outcome still feels the same. The story is full of gaps. The timeline keeps sparking debate, and people everywhere are still trying to piece it all together. That curiosity hasn't gone anywhere. If anything, it's grown stronger. For an institution built on visibility, tradition, and public connection, even small moments of uncertainty can stand out in a big way. And in this case, that uncertainty didn't fade. It expanded. More attention, more questions, more people pulling into the conversation. This doesn't feel like a simple royal story anymore. It's turned into something closer to a modern media puzzle playing out in real time. Every detail gets examined, every moment gets replayed, and every bit of silence, it carries weight. That's what keeps people watching. Because when a story leaves room for interpretation, it doesn't just end. It keeps evolving with every new perspective that steps in. Now everything shifts to one big question. What does Arthur Edwards do next? Because after everything he's already hinted at, stepping back completely doesn't seem likely. Not when his words have already pulled so much attention back into the spotlight. Arthur isn't just another voice. He's someone with decades of real first-hand experience. He's been just steps away from some of the most defining royal moments ever captured. And when someone like that starts opening the door, even just a little, people expect more. And that's where the anticipation really starts building. There are a few ways this could go, and each one matters. He could stay careful, releasing small details over time, just enough to keep people talking without fully stepping into the center of it all. That would match the steady, measured tone he's known for while still feeding the curiosity. Or he could go all in, a full interview, a detailed breakdown, maybe even a clear public statement that lays everything out. And if that happens, it would shift the entire conversation instantly.
No stress there. Not even a little bit of stress. None. And there should be there because she's getting ready to have one of the worst painful things of her life, having a baby. And when that happens, you look forward to the event, but you don't look forward to that pain. And it's so bad, a lot of women can't remember.
Because it wouldn't just be speculation anymore. It would be coming directly from someone who saw things from the inside. But there's also another possibility. He says nothing more at all. And strangely, that silence might be just as powerful. Because when someone with that level of access pauses after saying something like, "We were told to stay away," it sticks. It leaves people thinking, questioning, and watching for what might come next. It keeps people wondering what else he knows and why he might be holding back. At the same time, media outlets are watching closely. If Arthur drops even the smallest follow-up comment, it could spread fast and bring every part of this story right back into the spotlight. That's the kind of influence he has. One sentence, just one, could completely shift the tone of the entire conversation. And timing, that matters just as much as the words themselves. If he chooses the right moment to speak, especially when things start to calm down, it could instantly pull everything back to the surface again. Right now, everything feels paused, but not quiet. It's the kind of pause where people are watching closely, waiting, and trying to predict what comes next. Because if Arthur Edwards steps forward again, it won't just add to the story, it could reshape how everything is understood. And after everything that's unfolded, one thing is clear. This story isn't finished. It's still open, still being talked about, still raising questions that people can't ignore. From the missing moments, to the limited access, to Arthur Edwards' statements and the massive online reactions, every piece has added another layer to something much bigger than it first looked. Now, it comes down to you. What do you actually think is going on here? Do you see this as privacy being protected? Or does it feel more like a carefully controlled narrative? And how do you take Arthur Edwards saying, "We were told to stay away"? Does that sound normal to you? Or does it stand out as something unusual? What about the media shift? Do you think the way visibility was handled changed the story completely? Or was this just a modern approach in a fast-moving digital world? And that viral clip, was it taken out of context? Or did it raise fair questions worth talking about? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this is one of those topics where every opinion adds something new. The more people break it down, the clearer, or maybe even more complicated, it becomes. If you found this interesting, don't forget to hit that like button so more people can jump into the conversation. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what happens next, especially if new details start coming out.
Meghan Markle's creepy Prince William stalking has just been uncovered, and what it shows you is that she is still completely obsessed with the other brother. The brother who she really wanted. Okay, that brother who has the power, who has the humor, and who has the money.
For nearly 1,000 years, the royal family lived by one powerful rule. No matter what headlines exploded across the media, no matter how brutal the rumors got, the royals stayed quiet. That silence was part of the image, the mystery, the control, the untouchable reputation. It all depended on never reacting publicly. This was never just some simple PR move either. It was the core system behind one of the oldest institutions on the planet. The monarchy survived scandals, betrayals, public outrage, and non-stop pressure because they kept emotions hidden and handled problems behind closed doors. But then, According to reports that started spreading across royal insiders and commentators, something changed completely in late 2025. The old rule reportedly got tossed aside in a way nobody expected, and William allegedly did not handle it with some calm royal statement or polished palace response. There was no carefully crafted press release meant to cool things down quietly.
For the time being, it's impossible for me to take my family back to the UK safely.
Reports claim he came out fighting hard, and suddenly the palace looked nothing like the controlled machine people were used to seeing. The entire tone around the monarchy reportedly shifted fast, and people following the royal family closely started noticing the difference immediately. Tonight, we are breaking down all of it. Where this reported shift supposedly began, what insiders claim started happening behind palace walls, what William allegedly said publicly, what Catherine was reportedly doing quietly behind the scenes, and why this entire situation could change the monarchy moving forward. Because if even part of these reports are true, then the royal family people see today is completely different from the version the world knew just a few years ago.
But the problem is, this is a woman so desperate to try and save her failing business that she knows there are only two things that work anymore. There are only two things that get her attention, even amongst her dwindling band of propagandists in the mainstream media. And those two things are, number one, her children, and number two, her proximity to royalty.
The silence that protected the institution for generations may no longer be the strategy anymore. According to reports, the turning point may have started sometime between 2021 and 2023, when a collection of private messages allegedly surfaced and landed in the hands of key people inside the institution. And once that reportedly happened, insiders claim the mood inside the palace changed overnight. Not slowly, not through some quiet meeting about handling public image more carefully. Reports describe a massive internal shift that allegedly made people inside the institution stop and rethink everything they believed was happening behind the scenes. The atmosphere reportedly became tense fast, with senior figures suddenly viewing situations through a completely different lens. These were not described as random gossip or messy rumors floating around online. According to commentary and reports, the messages allegedly painted a detailed picture of what was happening privately during one of the most chaotic periods the royal family had faced in decades. And for the people who reportedly saw those messages, the contents were said to be deeply uncomfortable. According to what has been reported, King Charles was allegedly described as emotionally distant during a period when Meghan publicly said she needed support the most. That alone reportedly created serious concern internally and may have shifted conversations happening among senior royals behind closed doors. But insiders claim one specific sentence allegedly changed everything inside the palace. According to reports, Meghan allegedly wrote that if Charles would not protect her, the narrative will safeguard me. That line reportedly hit hard inside royal circles because people immediately started debating what it actually meant. Some believed it sounded like a warning about public perception and media influence. Others reportedly viewed it as a sign that control over the royal image was beginning to slip away in ways the institution had never dealt with before. And depending on how someone interpreted that sentence, it could completely change the way they viewed everything that happened after that. One way to read the situation is this: Meghan may have genuinely felt trapped, isolated, and unsupported inside an institution that seemed impossible to navigate.
We don't go back to some of the practices in the past that Harry and I had to grow up in. I think it's safe to say that change is on my agenda.
From that perspective, someone trying to protect themselves and speak openly about painful experiences is completely understandable. That interpretation has been discussed heavily, and many people believe it deserves to be acknowledged fairly. But according to reports, there was another interpretation that allegedly hit much harder inside palace walls. Some insiders reportedly viewed those messages as something far more calculated. Not simply someone sharing personal experiences, but a deliberate effort to shape public opinion using private moments, emotional struggles, and sensitive family situations. And according to royal commentary, that distinction changed everything. The conversation reportedly shifted from, she is telling her side of the story, to concerns that there may have been a broader strategy behind how certain narratives were presented publicly. Once palace figures allegedly started viewing events through that lens, insiders claim there was no going back. Suddenly, every interview reportedly looked different. Every headline, every carefully timed media appearance, every story that surfaced in the press started getting analyzed in a completely new way. What may have once looked like emotional fallout reportedly began getting viewed internally as something far more organized and intentional. According to reports, the palace allegedly stopped treating the situation as a private family issue that needed patience and quiet understanding. Instead, insiders claim it started being handled like a serious institutional challenge that required an actual strategy behind the scenes, not just polite public statements saying, "We wish them well." Reports suggest conversations allegedly became far more serious than that, with senior figures believing the monarchy needed a stronger and more coordinated response moving forward. At the same time all of this was reportedly unfolding, another major shift was allegedly happening behind closed palace doors. King Charles, while reportedly managing serious health concerns of his own, is said to have made a decision that shocked people inside royal circles. Instead of handling the Sussex situation through the monarchy's usual slow-moving system, filled with committees, formal procedures, carefully measured statements, and royal distance, reports claim Charles allegedly handed full responsibility over to William.
The only way she is going to try and sell these jams, I still don't think it's going to be effective, is pimping out the children and her husband. Nancy Sidley, hey Meghan, the British called. They want you to stop hijacking their culture or apologise for causing them racist. Here's your proof that Meghan Markle knows the only things that will get her failed brand attention are Harry and the kids. That's it. And sure enough, this was immediately briefed to People magazine, the propaganda set People magazine, who somehow tried and turned that low-budget video into something cutesy pie because she's just given Archie and Lily another new nickname. Did you pick up on that? It's Lil now. Lil and Arch. The Royal News Network responded, "What the heck is this?"
According to insiders, this internal arrangement was reportedly referred to as Memo 2485, while some accounts allegedly called it the Fall Mandate. And if the reports are accurate, the meaning behind it was simple but huge. William would now take full control over anything connected to Harry and Meghan moving forward. One voice, one strategy. No more mixed messaging coming from different parts of the palace. According to commentary surrounding the reports, that level of authority being passed down was highly unusual and carried massive significance inside the institution. And historically, this kind of move almost never happens. Royal disputes at this level have traditionally been handled directly by the reigning monarch. The sovereign decides what gets addressed publicly, what stays private, what quietly disappears, and what receives a formal response. That has been the system for generations. So for Charles to reportedly step back and place that responsibility directly into William's hands was not viewed as some small procedural change. According to reports, insiders allegedly saw it as a loud signal that the old royal playbook was no longer working for this situation. And considering everything Charles himself was reportedly dealing with at the time, many royal watchers believe the decision may have reflected just how serious palace officials believed the situation had become behind the scenes. At the time, King Charles was reportedly dealing with an incredibly difficult balancing act. He was managing a serious health situation while still carrying out the non-stop responsibilities of being sovereign. State visits, diplomatic meetings, public appearances, major ceremonies, constant pressure from the media. The workload never really stopped. And according to reports, trying to personally manage one of the most complicated family situations the monarchy had faced in decades on top of all that became far too much for one person to handle alone. Insiders allegedly believed the pressure inside the palace had reached another level entirely. William, on the other hand, reportedly had the energy, the focus, and maybe most importantly, the personal investment in what was happening. Reports claim he was not interested in quietly sidestepping the situation or carefully dancing around it the way previous generations often did. And according to royal commentary, Charles allegedly understood exactly how direct William's approach could become and still chose to hand him the responsibility anyway. That decision reportedly said a lot about how seriously the situation was being viewed behind closed doors. What this reported arrangement also changed was the palace's communication strategy moving forward. According to insiders, there would now be one clear voice handling anything connected to Harry and Meghan. No more mixed messages, no more confusion about who was speaking for the institution. In previous years, there were reportedly moments when different parts of the palace appeared disconnected, with conflicting signals allegedly coming from separate royal offices at the same time. Reports claim that era was officially over. People working around William supposedly recognized immediately that the approach ahead was going to look very different from the traditional royal method the public had been used to seeing. The strategy reportedly became sharper, faster, and far more controlled behind the scenes. And while the public was heavily focused on Catherine's health during this same period, another layer of the story was allegedly unfolding quietly in the background. People around the world were concerned about her recovery and wondering when she would return publicly. But according to reports, she was still deeply involved behind palace walls, not through speeches or public appearances, not in front of cameras. Insiders claim Catherine was allegedly helping shape the direction the monarchy itself was preparing to take moving forward. And honestly, according to royal commentators, that reportedly makes perfect sense given her role inside the institution. Catherine had spent years learning exactly how the monarchy functions, what keeps public trust alive, and what could potentially damage that image if left unchecked.
Is this idea that somehow my wife was the one that destroyed the relationship between these two brothers.
Reports suggest she strongly understood that the royal family's value depended heavily on one thing above all else: showing up, putting duty before personal drama, and maintaining stability in the public eye. Anything that distracted from that image reportedly became viewed as a serious problem internally. So while recovering privately, Catherine was allegedly already thinking several moves ahead. According to reports, questions inside the palace reportedly became, what should the monarchy look like during this moment? What message should the public be seeing? And what situations needed to be addressed before they created long-term damage? The answers she allegedly helped shape reportedly became the foundation for many of the public moves William would later make. Insiders claim new internal protocols quietly started taking form without public announcements or dramatic headlines attached to them. According to reports, stricter rules around messaging were allegedly introduced behind the scenes. Clearer boundaries were reportedly set regarding what deserved a response, what should be ignored completely, and how to separate the image of the working royals from ongoing headlines coming out of California. And perhaps the biggest reported shift of all was this: the palace allegedly decided the old strategy of endlessly absorbing criticism without pushing back was no longer sustainable. What makes Catherine's alleged role especially fascinating is how invisible it reportedly remained through all of this. No public credit, no official acknowledgement, no dramatic reveal. Everything was supposedly happening quietly in the background, which many royal watchers believe may have made the strategy even more effective. Because by the time William's tougher public approach started becoming visible, reports suggest the entire plan had already been carefully built behind closed doors. According to reports, even though Catherine's name was nowhere near the headlines during this period, her influence was allegedly all over the strategy taking shape behind palace walls. Insiders claim many of the decisions and messaging shifts reportedly carried her fingerprints quietly in the background. But before any of the tension exploded publicly, William allegedly made one final attempt to handle the situation privately and directly with Harry. Reports say that in October 2025, William personally called his brother, and according to royal commentary, this was not some casual family check-in or emotional reunion conversation. William reportedly had one very specific goal during that call. He allegedly wanted Harry to publicly correct what William believed were false or misleading claims surrounding Catherine and how she had supposedly treated Meghan. Reports claim William was not demanding some dramatic apology or asking for a full reconciliation between the families. He simply wanted what he believed was an accurate version of events placed on the record. But according to insiders, Harry's response reportedly changed everything. The conversation allegedly came to a dead stop when Harry reportedly said that changing the narrative now would damage everything he had built in his new life.
And we know that's because she has no other choice. Nothing else is working, from the Mama's Little Helper video to the Disney pictures. Meghan Markle only has one thing that anyone cares about: her children and her husband. And unfortunately, what this does is completely torpedo her and Prince Harry's bid to try and claim some type of political win with their bid to crack down on social media.
And according to reports, that answer hit William hard behind the scenes. Think about the weight of that moment for a second. According to these accounts, William believed he was asking his brother to clarify the truth regarding their sister-in-law. But the reported response allegedly suggested the public image surrounding the situation had become too valuable to walk back publicly. And from William's alleged perspective, insiders claim that was the exact moment he stopped believing this could still be solved privately between brothers. Reports suggest he no longer viewed Harry as someone stuck in confusion or caught in the middle of competing pressures. Instead, according to royal commentary, William allegedly came away believing Harry had made a clear choice, and that the choice prioritized public narrative and personal branding over protecting family relationships. Then, only days after that reported phone call failed to resolve anything, William allegedly did something that stunned even long-time royal watchers. According to reports, he stepped into the picture gallery at Kensington Palace and addressed the situation publicly himself. No spokesperson standing in front of microphones. No carefully polished palace statement packed with vague diplomatic language. No royal phrasing designed to sound important while revealing almost nothing. Insiders claim William spoke directly and plainly in a way the royal family almost never does publicly. Reports say he allegedly pushed back against claims involving Catherine head-on and stated clearly that nobody in the family had treated Meghan in the way some public narratives had suggested. He also reportedly referenced what he described as organized attempts to damage Catherine's public reputation through media stories, online amplification, and strategically boosted coverage. And according to observers, the way William framed the situation reportedly carried a much bigger message than just defending Catherine. He allegedly described one side as a family focused on duty, public service, charity work, state responsibilities, and showing up consistently without making themselves the center of attention. Then, without directly naming anyone, reports say he contrasted that with what he viewed as a very different approach built around publicity and media battles. The striking part, according to people in the room, was that he did not even need to say names out loud. Everyone watching reportedly understood exactly who and what he was referring to, and the reaction afterward was explosive. Royal commentators reportedly said they had never seen a senior royal communicate this way before. Not this openly, not this directly, and especially not with this level of willingness to call out alleged media coordination and public narrative management in front of cameras. This was not the monarchy using its traditional, careful language filled with distance and restraint. According to reports, this felt like something entirely different. The future king deciding publicly that the old rule of staying silent at all costs no longer worked in the modern media era. And from that moment forward, insiders claim one thing became very clear behind palace walls. Whatever happened next, the royal family reportedly had no intention of remaining the quiet side in the fight anymore. What many people watching this drama did not fully realize at the time was that a huge amount of the palace's response had reportedly already been planned long before William ever stepped in front of cameras at Kensington Palace. According to reports, a private team of specialists had allegedly been assembled quietly behind the scenes with no public announcement at all. Their reported job was not public relations in the usual royal sense. Insiders claim they were tasked with carefully studying and tracking the entire Sussex-related media landscape in detail. That reportedly included analyzing connections between stories, identifying which media outlets certain narratives appeared in, monitoring timing patterns, studying how stories spread online, and examining how specific topics gained traction across social media and press coverage. According to reports, everything was allegedly mapped out piece by piece, and what insiders claim they eventually saw reportedly did not look random at all. According to royal commentary, the palace allegedly began viewing the pattern as highly coordinated. Stories reportedly appeared in carefully selected outlets at strategic moments. Certain headlines allegedly gained rapid attention through amplification methods that seemed designed to place them directly in front of targeted audiences at exactly the right time. Reports suggest palace officials gradually stopped seeing the situation as simply Harry and Meghan sharing personal experiences publicly. Instead, insiders claim it allegedly started being viewed as a structured media operation focused on shaping public perception of the royal family, especially Catherine. By the time William reportedly gave that now heavily discussed appearance at Kensington Palace, reports say he had already been fully briefed on everything this private team had allegedly gathered behind closed doors. And according to reports, the response from the other side came fast. Within roughly 72 hours of William's public comments, major American outlets reportedly published fresh stories focused on Meghan's emotional experience